like that. There's one more special method that I want to cover with you, and it's called the initialization method. And the initialization method always starts with 2 underscores, INIT, 2 underscores. That's the special name. And the reason that you're using the special name is that this method gets called when you create that blueprint, or when you create an object from that blueprint. So when you create an instance of the class, it will call this. Now, what's useful about this is this allows you, at the time that you create the class, to set some properties of the class. That's really useful. So you'll notice in my previous code, I had the car had 4 wheels and it was a Ford every time I created it. If I wanted to change it to a Toyota, then I would have to change that property. It's much more efficient that if I create that car, that to tell it how many wheels and who made it. So I can pass that integer and the string straight into it when I create the class, and using the initialization method, you can see it's now setting those values. So when I create the class, I'm going to say CL car, pass it the integer 4 and the word Ford, and it'll be created with those. So let's go back and revise this code so that it has the initialization class rather than having these in here. So let's go DEF 2 underscores INIT. Oops, that's not the one. Let's just roll it back here. There it is. Self. Again, every method always has self because it's a member of that class. Okay, so just leave it there. Now we can go int wheels, str make. I'm going to say int car wheels and int car make because I want to differentiate between those two. Car X int car gas equals. Now, what I can do with this, I'm just updating these names so that I can reflect those correctly. Okay, so first thing we need to do is make sure we're using dot notation to set those properties. We're using self on those, SELF, and one more time, SELF. There we go. Because inside a method, if we're referring to a variable or a property, we need to use self. So now int car wheels is equal to int wheels there, and str make is where we're getting the make from the car. So now you can see we're taking those as parameters. Int wheels goes here, int make goes here, and then those get assigned to the internal properties for that object. Int car gas, I'm just going to leave as 20. That's a reasonable amount of gas unless you're driving a Hummer. So, or if it's electric, then we've got a different thing, right? We've got to have battery charge or something like that, but we won't get that crazy just yet. So now if I want to notice down here, it's now highlighting these instant instantiations of the object because I'm not giving it those parameters that it needs. So I'm going to give it wheels and a make. And this one can be, let's say, 8 wheels, and it'll be one of those trucks that has too many wheels. All right, so now it's working. And now I can see when I create that car that that make is coming through as Toyota because I have done that. I can even say, as part of that initialization, you bought a, let's turn around and just use that right in there. Self str car make. Okay, so I can take that, take this, put it in that property, take that property, and then reinsert it right into that F string. So that when I buy the car, okay, it says you bought a Toyota, you bought a Volvo. So now I can start turning out these cars very quickly, and they become part of the library. These are available for the lifespan of this program for me to do things with. They can interact with each other. I can add objects, or I can add different properties and methods to these. So this is a very, very powerful way to create objects that are very complex data structures where I manage each of those objects' data separately. Can you imagine, let's say I have 10 cars in my garage that I want to keep track of. Can you imagine creating a program without using objects that keeps track of those? What we're talking about is probably some kind of crazy nested list, like the employee database, except bigger. And then if I want to do something to those cars, like drive them, then I have to take the value of the gas tank. I have to subject that to a function and then put it back in the right slot in that complex data structure. So by doing this way, I have a very simple program that allows me to keep track of some pretty complex things and do things very simply that belong to that class. And so we start to get a really powerful look at things when we start using the initialization class, because that allows me to create things on that blueprint that have a lot of differences about them. And that's pretty cool. So one more thing that I want to talk about